Everyone, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks a lot for giving me space to speak today, and thanks a lot, Javed and Nikki, to talk about your workshop, because that's really that's a really key thing that we also wanted to do in the research network we're creating. So it's a really nice basis and start for the work we hopefully will carry along. So my name is Florence Ruby, and I work as a researcher for the Anna Freud Centre. And we received a little bit of funding from the Emerging Minds to start a network, a research network on youth mental health and racism. And just as a start, I wanted to say that Anna Freud is a charity, or the group of researchers I'm part of, is really trying since Black Lives Matter and since June last year to really reflect on racism and its impact on youth mental health, and especially think about, okay, if we're doing research on mental health in young people, why are we not looking at racism, and why is the organization not really talking about it or reflecting on this and including this? So that's really the journey we're trying to bring everyone along. And we organized a roundtable in December with a few people, I think, who are here today, who are attending this meeting as well. And it was really as a way to start the conversation for us and see what people had to say and see how we could shape the network and bring different people together to shape the network. And mostly it was about hearing from people about, what we should focus on in this network, what we should really consider when starting this network. And we had mainly researchers working in the field, but also a couple of clinicians and representatives from community organizations. And it actually brought quite a lot of challenging conversations for us, but also really valuable feedback, because it really helped us reflect on things that probably as, let's say, white researchers, we did not think about or reflect on. And it was a very, very useful conversations for us to have and to think about when shaping this network. And one of the main topics of conversations, even though we really wanted to create space to talk about, okay, what are the kind of research priorities we want to focus on? Actually, we had a lot of conversations around, the research approaches, the research that we do is racist in itself, and we need to focus on that as well, rather than just do research on youth mental health and racism. There's a lot of considerations we also need to make about the ways we do research and the methods that we use. And I think this was reflected throughout the research process. Basically, there's feedback, for example, about the ways that, right from the beginning, if you want to do research on this, you need to involve young people from Black and minority ethnic groups and involve them in shaping the research, involve them in the research questions, because what are those questions otherwise looking at? Is this really, we need to make sure that those are meaningful for the young people we are actually trying to make a difference for. And definitely, I mean, all those things might feel very basic, but I think for someone who's not gone through or who's not worked on this for a very long time, definitely it was very insightful feedback. The other things around planning the research is also really important. For example, the methods that you use in terms of, there's a lot of research out there looking at differences between ethnic groups, for example, saying that, for example, there were like research outputs looking at, like differences in mental health difficulties in schools between white young people and people of color, and saying that white young people were more likely to experience mental health difficulties. But does it really reflect the experience of the young people at the moment? Like, what is it? Is the method that we're using not adding biases to the data, or like to the way we collect the data, and not giving the right answers because of the methods that we're using? And I think that's something as researchers we need to be very, very careful about, that whatever methods we use are actually taking us forward rather than just reinforcing the racist approaches. There was also something about for researchers to really, rather than just do more research, there was really this sense that actually we need to make a difference, that whatever we do as a researcher, we need to actually take it forward and make a difference for the young people we involve in this research. That more research in itself is not really helpful, but for example, what Kadra was talking about, linking that research and practice and policy was really, really key, because more research out there is not helping. There's already so much out there, and we need to make it more visible. We need people to access it more, to involve it more in practice, rather than just do more research for the sake of being researchers, I guess. And there was also a lot of discussions around the considerations we need to make as researchers when we're involving young people, especially young people from Black and minority ethnic groups, in terms of, as researchers, having this position of power and privilege. What does it mean for a young person, a Black young person, to come to us and for us to say, so tell us about your experience of racism? And there are probably much better ways to engage young people than doing this. For example, one thing I'm really keen with this research network is involving more community organizations to work with them, and those community organizations who have great links or who are doing great work with the young people and have those relationships, for us to help them do the research that is helpful to them and involve them in that way, rather than us just going around asking young people about these things. And there was also a lot of considerations around how we need to make sure that we're creating safe spaces when we are engaging young people in those conversations, and what does it mean to talk about racism, and how violent some of those conversations can be, which probably we as white people don't really understand, and things that we really need to be careful about. And also how different groups might engage or might not want to engage in the research, might not want to talk about, because different groups have different risks or have different experience racism in a different way. And all those things that we need to consider if we want to do research on youth mental health and racism, and not just, I guess, the ideal at the beginning from launching this kind of research network was about, okay, we need more research on this, but definitely the message we got is we don't need more research per se. We need to make it more valuable, more meaningful, and more applicable for the young people, that it really makes a difference for them, and that in the ways we're doing research, not reinforce racist practices as well. And just to finish, really the kind of things that for people, maybe some of you who are joining today, who are interested in doing more research, especially white researchers, who the message that we got from this roundtable was around, we really need to be authentic in our approaches, that we need to be open-minded, we need to be open to learning, and we need to be open to whatever young people are telling us, that we need to be respecting their voices rather than sugarcoating it in a way that may be more easily accepted outside. And that if, as an organization or as researchers, we want to do this kind of research, we want to help with this, we also need to be ready to kind of relinquish some kind of privilege that we might have, because talking about racism, like I think Nikki, it was you talking about the Sainsbury's advert, that Sainsbury's got so much backlash talking about this. Or like, for example, Barnados, who put something out in December around white privilege, how much backlash they got because of this. And we need to accept that we're going to have to relinquish some kind of privilege if we want to do this research. And if organizations or research groups are not ready to do that, then we need to reflect on, okay, are we ready to do this kind of research then? I think that's the main key things that I wanted to mention here, and I'll be talking a little bit more about the research network later on, I think, but that's what I wanted to share today. Thank you so much for the space.